Everybody, TJ Mac Vintage Cards here, and today I'm doing just one of my shout out videos where I'm going to show off also some of my new pickups. So the shout out today is going to Hedgehog, Eric, and Eric's a huge Yankees fan, specifically Don Mattingly gets a lot of his cards. He's getting into some vintage with 70s cards, working on some of those sets. I believe he's working on the 77 top set because that's a set that's near and dear to him. Especially some of those Yankees cards. And then he's also reps quite a bit of Topps Heritage, at least he was a little while back when it first came out, the 2021 Topps Heritage, and I enjoyed watching those videos as well. So he's just got a fun channel, just always has different kinds of cards that he's showing off, which is cool. Gets a lot of care packages sent to him, which I've said many times is a reflection of the type of person that he is in the community and how well liked he is. I also appreciate the genuine comments in his videos that he's always putting forward on my channel, and I just really want to appreciate and recognize Eric. So I'll put a link down to his channel if for some reason you're not subscribed, but if you aren't, you may want to consider subscribing because I think it's a good channel. And secondly, I want to shout out all those that are going to the National. I wish you safe travels. Hopefully you'll be able to connect with some other collectors while you're out there and pick up a lot of the cards on your want list. And I really look forward to seeing the videos while you're out there for those that are filming them and when you get back. So just best wishes for a safe trip, and I will look forward again to seeing those videos. So now let's go look at some cards. First one here, this is a card I've had for a little while. It's a little bright here, let it shine in here. This is a 1955 Bowman Aaron, and certainly the 55 Topps I think is a more beautiful card set overall, and the Aaron card I think is a work of art, just a beautiful card. But the 55 Bowman set, to me, as somebody who enjoys history and pop culture, this is just a great looking set because it really captures the color television, which was really a game-changing way of communicating at that time. To see things in colors, it just changes the way you view sports. To see real green grass in a baseball stadium. Obviously, television in general changed the way news was received, but color television can bring different insight to certain images that you see in the news. So it really was a game-changing way in our culture for how people received information. Even advertising, to see products in color was something that was certainly a lot different for people at that time. So I really like this set because it's a reflection of that. I know it doesn't have a lot of rookies, and a lot of people feel it's not the most attractive set, but to me, I think it's a set that captures the 1950s era very well, and I do have a couple cards in my collection that are from the 55 Bowman set. But I do like this Aaron especially because I always like when they have the patch of the Indian on the sleeve, when they show that on the cards. You can see the Braves pretty well on his chest there, and then the cool Milwaukee Braves hat. And I really like the sky in the background. It's not a real crisp blue sky, which is kind of cool. I just think it's a really cool image. And then you can also see the stadium in the background, and then Aaron's looking up, which is interesting as well. This is him very early on in his career, and then you often wonder what guys like him are thinking. Just a baseball legend. Did he really think he was going to have the career that he had? I'm sure he probably didn't, but you never know. And I just find that fascinating when you see these legends at such a young age starting out, and just the journey that lied ahead of them, just the incredible journey. Certainly for a guy like Hank Aaron, there were some ups and downs, just because, being a black man in baseball, when you're trying to break a legend's record, it's hard enough to do it, black or white, but he actually obviously got some additional hate mail and things like that because of the color of his skin. But in the end, he triumphed, had a good life, it seemed by all indications, and just left baseball as an all-time great that'll be remembered forever. So now moving on here, next to the Harold Baines 1981 Topps. This is a new pickup. I never had an 81 Baines in my top 30 from that year because I built him long before he was ever in the Hall of Fame. And I know he's kind of a controversial selection. He was a six-time All-Star, 289 batting average. He had over 2,800 hits, 1,600 RBIs. 384 home runs. So he was a very good player, no doubt about it, and certainly had a lot of longevity. He was a DH for much of his career. For those that follow wins above replacement, it was 38, just over 38, which compared to other DHs like Big Papi, he's at 55, and then Edgar Martinez, let's check my notes, I think he's at 68. So he didn't measure up as well against those two, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's the standard they could see in the Hall of Fame. But there was some controversy with his selection, but my view on it is he's in the Hall of Fame, and I don't want to disparage him for that. So I'd rather just recognize him and say if he's a Hall of Famer, he earned it by the panel's selection. So that's where he resides, and plan on going to Cooperstown in August this year, and I will get to see his plaque. So then moving down here next is Danny White. This is a recent add to my collection as well. As I've said in other videos, I'm trying to expand some of my football cards now that I'm done with a lot of my Hall of Fame runs and things like that. And Danny White is one of those guys that I followed. He was my quarterback predominantly throughout my childhood as a Cowboys fan. I remember Staubach, but not real well. And White really had a tough job, and he did really well with it. I think he led the Cowboys to 3 NFC championships in a row in 80, 81, and 82. And what a lot of people don't realize is he was 62-30 as a starter, which is fabulous. And he threw 155 touchdown passes in his career, which was 2 more than Roger Staubach. Now, it doesn't mean that he's on the same plane as Staubach was. Football changed from the 70s to the 80s and how defenses could cover receivers and things like that. But I'm just trying to say that White was a pretty good quarterback. He threw for over 21,000 yards in his career as well. And it was always cool because he was the Cowboys punter. And I got to see him play against the Bills in 1984, and he was the quarterback that day, and I remember him punting on the sidelines as well. And it's just my first football game I ever attended live was the Cowboys and Bills, and it was great to see Danny White, who was one of my favorite players at the time, along with Tony Dorsett. So that's the Danny White. I'm just real happy to have this one in my collection and look forward to getting this out on display when I display my football cards in the fall. And then this next one here, I mean, talk about a good value. I just picked this card up. This is a grade 8, and sometimes, it's important just to kind of highlight this. When John Henry Johnson retired, he was a top 4 running back in NFL history. And this is a grade 8 card from 1964 Philadelphia, and I got this for, I think, like $18 shipped. And really just a great player for his time. He was a power runner, a quick runner. He was a incredible blocking fullback for the $1 million backfield San Francisco 49er teams of the mid-1950s. Then he got traded to the Lions, and he led the Lions in rushing when they won the NFL championship in 1957. Then he goes to the Steelers in the early 60s, and he has his only 2,000-yard plus seasons with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So just one of those guys that seemed to get better with age. He had a 200-yard rushing game with the Steelers in 1964 against the Browns. And Jim Brown just thought he was one of the best running backs of all time. And I'm going to listen to Jim Brown because he knows a little something about running backs. The shame with John Henry Johnson, though, is, like I said, when he retired, he was 4th all-time in NFL history in rushing with, got it here, over 6,800 yards. And he did not get into the Hall of Fame until 1987. So he retired in 1966 and did not get into the Hall of Fame until 1987. It was a long wait for a guy of his caliber. So I was just really happy to get a card. I have his rookie card, but I wanted to get a card with him on the Steelers, and I'm working as well to get one with him on the Lions. So just really beautiful looking image here, like those old Steeler uniforms with the yellow there and right below the shoulder pad. So just wanted to show this one off. And then a couple hockey pickups here. I got a Bob Gainey. Did not have any Bob Gainey cards in my collection. This is a 77 O-Pee-Chee. The Frank Selke Award is given to the best defensive forward. And that award started in the late 70s, and Bob Gainey won it 4 times in a row. Some say that the award was started because of Bob Gainey. He was just such a well-respected defensive forward. He was the guy that would take on the number 1 players on the other team, and he would oftentimes shut them down. He was just that kind of player. The Russians, I watched a video on YouTube about him, and the Russians were said to think this guy was the best player in the world, the Soviet hockey. They just had so much admiration for him. and a lot of how their players played. Their game was somewhat modeled after him. Just one of those guys that was just well respected internationally in hockey, and a guy you don't really hear as much about, especially on those great Canadian teams with Ken Dryden and Larry Robinson and Guy Lafleur and Steve Shutt, and they just had so many great players on those teams that won 4 Stanley Cups in a row in the late 70s. So just wanted to add him and get him in my collection because he's just one of those guys that really, if you're a hockey collector, you want to get some Bob Gainey cards. So glad to add this one. And just to show you, it's an O-Pee-Chee, so the O-Pee-Chees have the brighter backs, where the tops have the darker blue or grayish blue backs. And then this last card is another Montreal Canadian. I'm continuing to work on my 68 Topps key cards. Was really happy to add this Jean Beliveau. He's another one that's, I think, very undervalued in the hobby. He's a top 10, 12 player, and you can get his cards from the late 60s in this type of condition for around $50, sometimes even less. And again, he's one of the top 10, 12 best players to ever lace up the skates in NHL history. So I just, you know, think it's really nice that you can get those kind of deals still on a player of his caliber. And he was just such a gentleman off the ice. I loved learning about him as I added him to my vintage hockey case that I'm building, that I've done videos on. And I also just have so much admiration for the way he played the game as well. A lot of guys didn't mess with him. He was a gentle giant. He was about 6'3", I think, at the time. It's pretty big for a hockey player of his era. And he could scrap when he had to. They tested him early in his career, a lot of the other players. But then after that, they kind of knew that he could hold his own. So just real happy to have him in my collection as well. So I'm going to step back now to show these cards off one more time. And I hope everybody had a great day, and we'll talk again soon.